Hey, how's it going everybody? Welcome back to Aussie Fish Keeping. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about the 5 best things that you can feed your bristlenose. So bristlenose catfish are obviously a very common fish to be kept in the aquarium hobby. They're a great algae eater, and that's mainly the reason people actually keep them. They do help cut down your tank maintenance quite a bit. And because of that, I do think a lot of people buy them just as tank cleaners, and they sort of just forget that they need to be fed and that they need their own specialized diet. So yeah, for today's video, what I've done is I've gone and picked out 5 of the best foods that I like to feed my bristlenose, and that pretty much anybody can feed theirs. I mean, all of these things are pretty easy to access and they're very inexpensive. But yeah, I guess without any further ado, let's just jump straight into today's video with the first food on our list. So as for food item number 1, this one is probably what everybody's feeding their bristlenose. I thought I'd just throw it on the list anyway, and that's algae wafers. So algae wafers are an essential part of the bristlenose diet. Obviously, algae is an essential part of the bristlenose diet, and an algae wafer is just pretty much like a concentrated dry algae biscuit, I guess. And if you do own a bristlenose and you aren't feeding them algae wafers pretty regularly, then I mean, you definitely need to start doing that. So the reason algae wafers are so good, number 1, obviously they do contain really high content of algae, which is essential for the bristlenose. But they are a food item that's been literally designed for bristlenose, so they're mainly just to feed to bristlenose and other sort of plecos and other catfish. So because of that, everything in the algae wafer is very beneficial for your bristlenose. So these algae wafers actually provide your fish with essential fibers, minerals, and vitamins, which are very important for your bristlenose health. Obviously, the fiber is really good at making sure your bristlenose aren't getting like compacted, just because when they do get compacted, it can cause a lot of bloat, and that can cause a lot of problems with your fish. So yeah, it's definitely so important. If you aren't feeding your bristlenose algae wafers, you 100% need to get some and just throw them into their diet. I only really feed mine algae wafers about 3 to 4 times a week, probably even less than that sometimes. And a quick tip, I will just say, if you have a big community aquarium, make sure you throw in a few algae wafers, because not only will the bristlenose eat them, but your other fish will eat them as well, and generally your other fish will find them first. So sometimes they can eat all the algae wafers before your bristlenose even gets some. So yeah, if you do have a community aquarium, just drop a few algae wafers in there, give your other fish a bit of a treat as well. So yeah, with that being said, as for food item number 1 on our list, it's going to be algae wafers. Moving on to the next great food that you can feed your bristlenose. This one's sort of a 2-in-1, and that's fruit and vegetables. So this one is another pretty common one. I think a lot of people already know that they can feed their bristlenose things like this. So your bristlenose can actually eat quite a variety of different fruits and vegetables. I personally like to feed mine things like zucchini, green beans, rock melon. Although I've heard you can feed them things like strawberries, you can feed them sweet potato, you can feed them literally all sorts of fruit and vegetables, particularly green vegetables and like leafy greens. Those are the best sort of thing for them. Now, a lot of people actually like to, I guess, blanch the vegetables and fruit before they put them in their aquarium. So that does a couple of things. It softens them up for the bristlenose, which makes it a little bit easier for the bristlenose to eat. And it also makes them sink a lot easier, just because it takes all the air out of them and it pretty much just waterlogs them. So it can make it a lot easier to feed your fish that way. I personally don't really blanch them at all. I find it's just like a little bit too much extra effort for me. What I like to do, so I'll usually feed my bristlenose zucchini. So what I'll do is I'll cut up a little bit of zucchini, I'll stick it on a fork, and I'll just drop it in the aquarium. And then I'll come back at the end of the day and take it out. It is very important you're taking out any leftovers. You don't want to leave it in there for too long, just because that can break down and it can cause ammonia spikes in your aquarium. So yeah, you want to make sure you're not just leaving that in there. So what's really great about these things is obviously all of them provide a good amount of fiber for your bristlenose. They're also rich in vitamins like vitamin C, A, and K. And there's heaps of minerals like calcium and potassium in them as well. And all of these together contribute to great health for your bristlenose. So yeah, with that being said, another great thing that you can add into your bristlenose diet is fruit and vegetables. Moving on to another great food item you can chuck into your bristlenose diet. This one, I'm assuming a lot of people feed their bristlenose this, and it's going to be frozen foods. Now obviously by frozen foods, I mean frozen fish foods. So things like frozen bloodworms, frozen blackworms, frozen brine shrimp. all those sorts of frozen freshwater and saltwater invertebrates. With my bristlenose, I usually like to feed them frozen freshwater invertebrates. I don't really like to feed them frozen saltwater invertebrates, so things like mysis shrimp or brine shrimp. And I usually try and feed them things like frozen mosquito larvae, frozen blackworms, frozen daphnia. I also don't really like feeding bloodworms. I've heard a lot of people have really bad experience feeding their fish bloodworms. And yeah, I've never really, I guess, dipped my toes into the bloodworm feeding myself. So even though bristlenose are mainly herbivores, it is very important you put a little bit of protein in their diet every now and then. This is like something you don't want to feed too often. It can be very bad for your bristlenose if they have too much protein, just because they're not really designed to eat a lot of protein. But out in the wild, you know, these guys would be eating pretty much anything they can find. Food is pretty scarce out in the wild, and yeah, they're just going to try and eat anything they can find. And because of that, out in the wild, they would every now and then eat some form of protein, whether it's like a little worm or like some little crustacean. So it's great to simulate that in your aquarium and throw in a few frozen foods. I prefer to use the frozen foods than live foods, and the reason for that is because number one, frozen foods, once they thaw out, will pretty much always sink, and that makes it a lot easier for your bristlenose to actually eat. If you have like live mosquito larvae in there, obviously they stay up the top of your aquarium, so your bristlenose aren't really going to ever eat those. Now in particular, feeding your bristlenose protein heavy foods like these frozen foods is very important when your bristlenose are sick. So the protein boost that they get from these frozen foods really helps them repair themselves and supports really good growth. And another reason you can feed these guys those sorts of protein heavy foods is if you're trying to breed them. So when you're trying to condition your fish to breed, usually a lot of protein actually helps them develop those eggs inside of them. So yeah, with that being said, occasionally frozen foods are another great thing to throw into your bristlenose diet. Moving on to the next thing on the list, this is one of my favorite sort of, I guess, little enrichment treats I like to throw in there, and that's botanicals. Botanicals can be things like sticks, leaves, seed pods, bark, wood. Now you got to be sure that you're getting a good like edible botanical, so your bristlenose aren't going to eat like seed pods, twigs and stuff like that. They will occasionally sort of, I guess, gnaw on wood, but the main sort of botanicals I like to give my bristlenose are leaves, so particularly things like guava leaves, banana leaves, mulberry leaves. Those three leaves are absolutely one of the greatest things you can throw in for your bristlenose. So number one, once these little botanicals have fully submerged in your water, they will sort of start growing a small layer of biofilm over them, and that biofilm is great to supplement your bristlenose diet. It is something that they're eating out in the wild as well, so it really does help stimulate more natural behavior. Your bristlenose will also go ahead and eat the botanicals once they start to sort of soften and break down as well. And yeah, these botanicals and the biofilm in particular provide a great range of nutrients for your bristlenose, and they're definitely another great food item I'd recommend feeding them. And then moving on to the final food item, these guys should 100% be eating. This one again is, I guess, pretty obvious, and that's just going to be plain algae. So bristlenose are a sort of fish I prefer to use in mature aquariums. If you have a brand new aquarium, I find bristlenose don't do as well. Whereas if you have a mature aquarium, there's going to be lots of biofilm growing in your aquarium, there's going to be lots of microorganisms, and there's going to be lots of little patches of algae growing in your aquarium as well, which is what these bristlenose 100% need to thrive in your aquarium. So no matter what time of day I come into my fish room, I can pretty much always see a bristlenose on one of my aquarium glasses eating. I can literally see one right here to my right, and yeah, he's just munching away on some algae. So yeah, you definitely don't want to be keeping these guys in like a sterile aquarium, I guess, where there's absolutely no algae. It is, like I've been saying, the most important thing in their diet. And yeah, before you actually get your bristlenose, I would 100% just recommend keeping your aquarium running for a little bit. Wait till you get a little bit of algae growing and then go ahead and get some bristlenose. That way they're not going to just starve in your aquarium. So yeah, with that being said, algae is another vital thing that you need to keep in the bristlenose diet. So that is actually going to bring us to the end of today's video. I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope this video helps a few of you guys out. I'm sorry if I'm like extremely sweaty. It is so hot in here. I mentioned it in my last video, it's like extremely hot. It's like middle of summer here. But yeah, if you did enjoy today's video and you haven't done so already, please make sure to go down and subscribe. And while you're down there, smash the like button and comment your thoughts on today's video. I always love going down there and reading them all, and I try to reply back to as many comments as I can. Also, if you haven't done so already, make sure to go check out my website, aussiefishkeeping.com. I've got all sorts of fish, botanicals, and other aquarium products up there. I've got a Boxing Day sale, so if you want to get some botanicals for your bristlenose, now is the time. All of the botanicals are on sale. But yeah, with that being said, thank you all so much for sticking around to the end, and I'll see you all in that next video.